Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Burke County Board of Commissioners pre-agenda meeting for Tuesday, November the 5th, 2024 at 3 p.m. Madam Clerk, all commissioners are present. Remind you to silence your mobile devices. If you got telephones, pagers, other things, please silence those before we get our meeting started. And remind you, if you come to the podium to speak today, please be sure the red light's on the microphone. Push the button on the right and it should come on so that we can get a good recording and YouTube video today. This brings us to item number 2, gentlemen. Approval of agenda. I'd like to suggest a couple of changes in the agenda today. We are glad to have some FEMA folks that are with us working on our storm disaster relief. I'd like to add them for just a few minutes in presentation so they can give us an update of the FEMA response here in our county and in the region. And then on item number 7 in consent agenda, the BDI IDF natural gas project. We still need some more information on that project. I'm going to ask that we remove that project for today, and it will come back at a later time when everything is in order. With those changes, I would like to entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That is 5-0. All right. This brings us to presentations, and at this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Fred Dolan and Ms. Arlise Green with FEMA, and appreciate you guys being here today, and would be glad to hear a report kind of as to where we are here in the county and in the region. Appreciate what you're doing.
Yes, sir. My name is Fred Dolan from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, an acronym that I'm sure you've heard a lot lately. Glad to be here, but also crestfallen and heartbroken to be here for the reason that I'm here today. I'm joined by Arlise Green. Arlise is from the Small Business Administration, so I'm going to talk real briefly about FEMA and what's going on in the county, and then I'll turn it over to Arlise. So 40 counties have been impacted by the storm Arlene. And what I would tell you is that in the state of North Carolina, over 250,000 individuals have registered for disaster assistance, and over $214 million have gone out in support of individuals, households, and families with regard to assistance. Within the county itself here, we have had over 11,900 individuals who have registered for assistance, and over $9 million has come into the county. And this is just, again, individuals, households, and families, not talking about the businesses or the municipalities themselves. That's a different program. So there's still time to register for assistance. The deadline currently for individuals to register for assistance is November 27th. There are discussions of extending that deadline. We know who's registered for assistance, but we don't know those who need assistance and have not reached out. During disasters, a lot of times folks don't want to ask for help, don't want to ask for the assistance, but it's there. We just can't help them until they've identified themselves. There's 4 ways folks can register for assistance with us. It's 2024, so of course there's a FEMA app that they can download on the phone and register that way. There's also a website, disasterassistance.gov. Is another option. There's an 800 number, which is 800-621-3362. You'll talk to an individual and they can help. But the gold standard here is the Disaster Recovery Center, and we have one up here at the Foothills Education Center. Those folks are open every day of the week from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. I can tell you that they have seen over 1,100 individuals in the county since they've opened. They're averaging about 58 folks a day at this point. We're at the point of disasters where people are not only registering for assistance, but they've already been involved in the process, and they might have gotten an eligibility letter that says you are not eligible, or this, that, and the other. They need assistance determining and understanding these letters. They're very complex at times. The easiest thing that a person can do is come to the Disaster Recovery Center and sit across from a human being who can talk with them what they need to deal with in their cases. The Disaster Recovery Center can also be used to upload documents that need to be transmitted if that's the case. And it's a great place for advice. highly recommend that versus the phone or the other options. The other thing at the Disaster Recovery Center is it's not just FEMA. The SBA is there, and Arlene will talk to that, but it also includes resources from the county and the volunteer organizations in and around the area. No one agency, no one level of government can solve this issue and deal with the recovery. It really is a whole community effort. And my hat's off to the volunteers and the nonprofit organizations, houses of worship in the area that are supporting. The other thing to keep in mind at the disaster recovery letter is translation services. Those individuals that might have access and functional needs, they can support that, whether it's through video screens or put folks in line with a translator so they can speak in their native language that they're most comfortable with, to include American Sign Language. There's Braille resources, so really an opportunity there. The one thing I would also just quickly touch on too is another program we have is the Public Assistance Program. That's the one that reimburses municipalities for damages and costs associated with the storm. That's often the big focus is the municipalities, but I'd just like to say that also houses of worship and nonprofit organizations are also eligible for that program. And I know there are tons of houses of worship in the area that were impacted by the storm, so we really want to connect them to this program and get them started. So those are just a quick summary on that. As I said, over 11,000 residents have come to the DRC or registered for assistance. And I talked to the manager over there, and he's spoken very highly on the community and is grateful for the collaboration and partnership that the folks have shown here in the county. I'll stand by for any questions. I'll stay throughout the entire session, so if anybody has anything individually afterwards, happy to field that. So if not, I'll turn it over to Arlise.
Good evening. My name is Arlise Green. I'm a PIO, Public Affairs Specialist for the Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience of the U.S. Small Business Administration. We have two programs. We have one for physical damages and we have one for economic injury. Of course, with the physical damage, it is required that you do have physical damages. Who is eligible? Homeowners, renters, landlords, business owners, and nonprofit organizations. And then the other program we have is called economic injury. And this is for businesses and nonprofit only. But you do not have to have any physical damages. The damage comes in the loss of revenue. And sometimes it can take 6 months to a year or even longer before a business knows that they have been impacted by this injury. So again, the deadline to apply for the physical damages is November the 27th, 2024. And the deadline to apply for the economic injury is June the 30th, 2025. We give you that span because again, it takes a business a little longer to know that they have been affected by that injury. Now, a little bit about our program is that we have great incentive. 12 months, no interest or payment is due. For a business, they can borrow up to $2,050,000 with no collateral. The homeowners and renters, well, the homeowners can borrow up to $500,000, $50,000 with no collateral. A renter can borrow up to $100,000 with $50,000 with no collateral. The way to apply, again, you can go to the Disaster Recovery Center in Foothills, or you can visit the website lending.sba.gov. You can reach out to our customer service number at 1-800-659-2955. Thank you for letting me be able to present our program, and I hope it'll be of some benefit to your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Thank you, Mr. Dolan. Any questions for either of these folks right now? All right, seeing here none. Again, we appreciate you being here. Appreciate so much FEMA coming and being located here in Burke County as the disaster recovery location. And I think it's going to be a great benefit to our folks and also the region as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All All right, this brings us to item number 1, presentations. Comes from our sheriff today, recognition of Deputy Dustin McKinney for the Advanced Life Enforcement Certificate. Sheriff Hinsman. Afternoon, Sheriff.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Yeah, Dustin McKinney is a deputy at the Burke County Sheriff's Office, and he has received his Advanced Law Enforcement Certificate from the North Carolina Sheriff's Education and Training Standards Commission, and I would just like to publicly award him that at the next Commissioners meeting. That's
Very
what
good.
that
Any
is.
questions on this item?
That's awarded based on years of service, formal education, and in-service training.
Thank you, Sheriff. All right, we look forward to that. Without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Item number 2 comes from the EMS recognition of employees for life-saving. This will be presented by our county manager this afternoon, Mr. Epley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief James Robinson will present at your regular meeting. But the intent is to, on a quarterly basis, begin recognizing life-saving achievements from medics in our department who go above and beyond. And so we'll start with a couple of employees that partnered with local fire departments to administer CPR and do some life-saving measures and have the family here and do that in conjunction with Commissioner Burns. Thank you. I'll save the PowerPoint for the full meeting, if that's okay with the board, who sits on our EMS peer committee. So we just want to make sure that we're giving the appropriate level of recognition, similar to Sheriff Banks and his team, when accomplishments happen. If we don't take advantage of those and really recognize them, oftentimes we don't appreciate the effort and the talent that goes into it and what a big impact it makes. So happy to answer any questions you all may have. And Chief Robinson is in training for those, and he apologizes for his absence.
Any question on this item? See or hear none, this item will remain on the agenda. Item number 3 comes from the Health Department, the WIC USDA Breastfeeding Award. This will be presented by Christy Shupin this afternoon, our WIC Director. Afternoon, Christy.
Sorry. My name is Christy, and I'm the WIC Director with the Public Health. And WIC is the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for women, infants, and children. We serve income-eligible pregnant women, recently delivered mothers, infants, and children up to 5 years old. We provide nutrition education, access to healthy foods, and breastfeeding support, which benefit not only the families we serve, but also the local economy and the community. In fiscal year 24, WIC participants redeemed nearly $1.8 million at vendors in Burke County alone. In furthering our mission of supporting breastfeeding, we operate a breastfeeding peer counselor program, which is a mother-to-mother support program. And each year, USDA honors programs that they feel have excelled in breastfeeding promotion and support. And I'm proud to say that this year, Burke County was one of only 7 agencies in North Carolina and 82 nationwide to receive a gold level WIC breastfeeding excellence award. I'm so very proud of the work that our staff do every day and the progress that we're making. We have increased breastfeeding rates in our participants in Burke County 16% just in the last year. So we are very honored to receive this award on behalf of the WIC program.
All right, thank you, Christy. Any questions for Christy on this item? All right, well, this
Thank
item will remain on the agenda for our regular meeting, and we look forward to hearing a little bit more about it then. Item number 4 comes from Dr. Sarah Marr from the Health Department, also a Health Department of the Year Award, and this will be presented by our Health Director, Mr. Danny Scalise. Afternoon, Danny.
Thank you. This is really exciting for me. Dr. Morrow was kind of a giant in the medical society and the public health. So the Public Health Association named this award after her. It's for health departments that have had some kind of an outstanding work in the programs that they operate in their health department. A couple of our colleagues at UNC School of Public Health nominated us for this. Specifically, they sourced our work in substance use disorder and also as an academic health department, something we've worked really hard on in the last couple of years. And I think what you just heard from Christy is another great example of us showing that we're the best in the state.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions on this item? All right, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. And then item number 5, Danny, also from our Health Department, American Public Health Association. This is the W.C. Woodward Award, and this will be presented at our regular meeting, and it goes to our health director. And so, Danny, if you'll just give us a brief summary, we'll do a little more appropriate recognition at that time.
This was a nice surprise for me. I was at the American Public Health Association. This award is given nationally to a person who works in health administration for the outstanding work that they've done or scholarship. So I was pleased to receive that award. I think a lot of the people at the health department have helped me along the way, and I think we've got a nice little ship running down there.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any question on this item? Seeing here none, this item will remain on the agenda. Brings us to item number 6, Board of Commissioners proclamation honoring Commissioners Carswell and Mulvey for their public service. And this item will be presented more formally again at our regular meeting, and look forward to showing our appreciation to Commissioner Carswell, Commissioner Mulvey for their service to our commission and to our county at that time. So thank you, gentlemen. A little bit in advance, and we'll say more about that in a couple of weeks. All right, this brings us to item number 4, scheduled public hearings. First item comes from IT, ordinance changing road name and scheduled public hearing. This will be presented by our IT director, Mr. Scott Black. Afternoon, Scott.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Board. So we've got 2 road names up for you today. The first one is Green Court. We identified that there are 2 streets named Green Court, one that's in the town of Glen Alpine, and then one in the Hawksville subdivision on Highway 126. And so, just to avoid any chance of confusion, we've decided we're going to look at renaming the one in Hawksville. Fortunately, there's no houses currently on that, so all the lots are vacant. So we reached out, sent letters out to all the property owners and inquired with them about possibility of naming. The suggestion came back to change it to Green Mountain Court and drop the extra E off the end of green. And so that's what we're presenting to you for that today. You can see there's the two different streets, just as an example there. But so we had 8 of the 11 property owners responded back to our request to change the name.
All right, thank you, Scott. Any question on this item?
Can you repeat what it's going to be changed to?
It's going to be changed to Green Mountain Court, or sorry, Green Mountain. Let me make sure I got it right. Yes, Green Mountain Court.
Thank you. Other questions? All right, seeing here none, this item will remain on public hearing agenda. And this brings us to the second item, also road name change. Mr. Black.
Okay. So this is one that we identified this road off of Smoky Creek Road, and you can see it's highlighted in the light blue there, running up from Smoky Creek up to the north there. This is a fairly large kind of family subdivision. Most of these tracts, those green ones, are 10-plus acres up in there. So it hadn't really gone through a formal subdivision process. It had been treated as a minor subdivision. And so the right-of-way had been created and established for it, but it hadn't ever been given an official name. And so recently, this property at the bottom there, owned by the Braggs, they have put in plans to subdivide that property into 3 lots and named a road off of that. And we realized, well, Daisy Lane connects to an unnamed road to connect back to the Smoky Creek Road. And so we sent out letters again to the property owners asking for some suggestions on road names, and got several choices in this case back. So we got one person suggested Smoky Hill Road. That's the light blue property up in the top corner there. The 3 parcels in green suggested Doc Neal Road, and then The two in the orangey color there suggested Line Shot Lane. Or three, there's 3 parcels there. And so we'll bring those, we'll send letters back to the property owners, invite them to come to the public hearing if they could potentially suggest another name, but those are the 3 that we've heard of so far. And we'll let y'all pick one.
All right, gentlemen, any questions on this item? And we'll need to be prepared to make a choice on that at our meeting. And we, like Scott says, we could even get another choice.
You could get another choice, or you could come up with one of your own.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, this item will remain on the public hearing agenda. This brings us to the consent agenda, item number 5. First item on consent agenda comes from Western Piedmont Community College, proclamation for National Apprenticeship Week. I don't see Dr. Welch. You've had an opportunity, gentlemen, to see this proclamation in your package. Any question about that? Seeing here none, we'll leave this item on the consent agenda. Item number 2 comes from Western Piedmont Community College, presentation of financial data for the period ending September 30, 2024. This is going to be presented by Monica Arney this afternoon, controller for Western Piedmont. Afternoon.
My turn. Okay, there we go. First, I'd like to give a recap of fiscal year 2024. So we spent 95% of the state budget, with the remaining being eligible for carry forward. We did have a shortfall of $383,000, which was supplemented from our institutional funds. The allocations that will be carried forward include apprenticeship funding, basic skills, and various grant funds. For our county funds, we did spend 100% of the budget, with being just $11,000 over, which was pulled from our fund balance. And now to give a summary of our finances for the first quarter ending September 30th, 2024. For state funds, the state budget was enacted based on the second year of the biennium. Our current budget is $16,885,000. We're still waiting to see if the mini bill will have additional state funds for the enrollment growth, whether that will be overridden by the House and Senate. That would bring a little over $400,000 to Western Piedmont. Through September 30th, we have spent $3,899,000, which is consistent with previous years. The next 3 columns in light blue represent the county budget through September 30th. Current budget is $3,060,000 for operations. We've spent $668,000 through that first quarter, utilizing 21.9% of the budget, and that's slightly lower than in previous years. The final 3 columns show the institutional budget. We've budgeted $6,700,000 for institutional funds, and that includes things such as student financial aid, self-supporting classes, and our bookstore. This is more than last year's. We've had additional grants, more so than the previous years. Most of those accounts are restricted. Student aid accounts for 57% of the overall budget. During the first quarter, the student aid was 52% because the first financial aid run for the fall has already been processed in September, with fall being our largest semester. Total combined college budget, $26,650,000. We have spent approximately 28.2%, which is consistent with the prior years. On the next slide, we have a breakdown of expenditure categories for county. Major categories include salaries and benefits at 32%, contracted services 21.5%, and utilities at 16.6%. And I'll be glad to answer any specific questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Monica on this item? First?
Monica, could you give us a little insight or maybe an example of what contracted services would be?
Sure. Contracted services primarily are the janitorial services, and so they maintain all of our buildings.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, seeing here and none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Thank you very much. Item number 3 comes from the United Way, proclamation declaring December the 3rd, 2024 as Burke County Nonprofit Day in Burke County. This will be presented today by Abigail Taylor from United Way. She takes care of our marketing and campaign.
Hi. We're very excited to celebrate our 5th annual One Burke Gives Giving Day on December 3rd, 2024. This is a 24-hour Giving Day event hosted online at oneburkegives.org. So our first Giving Day event was in 2020 in response to COVID, to provide a convenient way for donors to give online and safely, and also nonprofits to be able to fundraise. And since that year, of course, our Burke County municipalities have proclaimed that day for us, so we are very happy to be here again, being able to do that. I just want to make a note that tomorrow evening, Catherine Christie with the Discover Burke will be accepting that proclamation. She is on our One Burke Gives planning committee. And so Giving Tuesday, of course, is a worldwide celebrated day, always the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And each year, Burke County United Way sponsors the platform and the website so that any 501c3 in Burke County can participate. And so we hope to continue to do that. The biggest amount that we've been able to raise together in one 24-hour period has been over $100K. So hopefully this year we can raise that number, especially after the hurricane. Hopefully people are willing to get together and give this year. So we wanted to thank you for doing that proclamation for us tomorrow.
All right, thank you, Abigail. Any questions for Abigail on this item? Great way for our community to give. Online operation works very well, and many of our local nonprofits do participate, and you can see who they are online, I think, in advance. Isn't that right? Yeah, very good. All right, thank you very much, Abigail. This item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 4 comes from our travel and tourism financial update for the period ending September 30, 2024. This will be presented by our CEO at the TDA, Mr. Ed Phillips. Afternoon, Ed.
Good afternoon. Thank goodness for this rain. Tell you what, I came outside earlier and I was like, ooh, it feels good. So before I get started on the actual financials, I wanted to tell you a little bit update on the post-Helene recovery and what it's meant to our hospitality and tourism industry. So immediately after the storm, and after the power came back on, we still had about 185 hospitality staff members, restaurant hospitality workers who were out of work in Burke County. Today, we're down to about 60. So we've made significant improvements, and I expect those 60 that are remaining will come back in the next week or two. And so we'll only have a few left to get back. Our hotels have been extremely busy. We have a post-recovery or recovery economy going on now in the hospitality and tourism industry, where folks are using our hospitality folks as they recover and as they service the businesses here that need it. And so they're at a very high occupancy. I will tell you this, we've done a rate study because people complain the rates are high, and the rates right now are the same as they were last October, November. So that we can tell. So there's been no significant increases in the hotel rates. Parks, so a lot of our parks and outdoor spaces have been closed due to the Helene storm. I can tell you that Valdez Lakeside Park is now open. Freedom Park in Morganton is open. The county park and part of the Fauna Flora Trail is open. And as of about 2 hours ago, the Oak Hill Community Park is open. And progress will be made and updated on our website, discoverburkecounty.com, as we learn about these places that reopen. So for the financial report, for our TEA budget, we have a budget this year starting in July 1 of $850,000, miscellaneous and trolley revenue that brought the total to $925,000. So far, our actual occupancy tax that came in for July at 90,000. That was a new July record. August has also been a record. We think September, October, November are also going to be records for occupancy tax. So that part of our economy recovery is healthy. On our other page there, you can see the balance sheet. And that shows it's First Citizens Bank and then a capital management account for a total asset of $772,069.16. The TDA is in a very healthy financial position. Looking forward to a strong winter. Can tell you we're working on a strategy right now with new traffic. So there's a new traffic pattern coming through Burke County because of Highway 221 in McDowell County is closed. And so people are being diverted either by GPS or common sense. They can't get up 221 to the high country. A lot of that traffic is coming down 40, getting off at Jamestown Road, coming across Independence, and going up 181, or turning right and going around the bypass to Highway 18 to Lenore 321. We have a tremendous amount of traffic coming through Morganton, people that maybe have never been here before. So we're working with the city tourism folks on that to try to come up with a way to reach those people and let them know to visit our shops. And I'll remind everybody, please shop local this year. Our businesses really need it.
All right, thank you, Ed. Any questions for Ed on his report? All right, seeing hearing none, this item will remain on the consent for presentation. Or actually, this will be remain on the consent agenda, okay? Everybody okay with that? All right, thank you very much. Item number 5, Burke County Public Schools, presentation of the financial data for the period ending September 30. Afternoon, Keith.
Good afternoon, Chairman Britton, County Commissioners. I'm here this evening to present your consent agenda item number 5, the September year-to-date financial results for Burke County Public Schools. You all are very familiar with this presentation. The first 2 columns, of course, being the previous year's actual financial results by funding category. The second column under that annual, it would be our current forecasted revenues. The next 2 columns under the heading September year-to-date, subheading previous would be last year, September 2023 to date results, the current column being September 2024 year-to-date results. Our first and largest funding source, of course, is our state funds, and as you can see, going over to the percent change column, you see 9.3% increase. That may appear to be a bit significant, but it's absolutely nothing to be alarmed about. What happened is last year, we were in the first of 2 years of a biennium budget, so wage increase and benefits cost increases were passed to us later in the year. With this being the second year of a biennium budget, of course, all that took effect July 1st. So we're 3 months ahead as far as those particular line items are involved. Next, we have our federal funding. As you can see, a substantial, very substantial decrease of 68.6% year to year through the first quarter. That's, of course, COVID funds. COVID funds are no longer with us. We've expended all of those funds, and hopefully those days are well behind us. Next, we have the local line item going across. You will again see a 9.3% increase quarter to quarter, year to year. Again, that's related to the biennium budget and the wage increase and benefits costs late in this last year, and then what was passed this year. Local consists of the charter schools, fines and forfeitures, and receivables all, which is all funding from you all. The charter school line item does appear, as you can see, substantially less. Statewide public schools and charter schools transitioned to a new system called Infinite Campus. There was a few hiccups starting the school year in order to get child count into the systems and get it reported. So charter schools were just a bit behind on invoicing us this year, but we'll certainly come into line in second quarter. I'd like to say that overall, we're pretty much where we anticipated we would be at this point. We're still, of course, as everyone, feeling the impacts of inflation. We all hear inflation is down. Inflation is down. I don't like to necessarily refer to it that way because prices are still going up, just not as quickly as they were. Inflation currently is at 2.4%, but we're all living, and this impacts particularly our local budget. We're all living the increase and pressures of inflation that since 2020, overall prices for us are up 21.4%, and construction materials are up 37.7%, with well over half of our local budget being maintenance of facilities. Of course, we're trying to find ways and always searching for ways to do more with less. That being said, I won't go to page 2 unless you all specifically have questions on page 2 of the financial results. But what that is the local budget, of course, by expense category. So with that being said, I'll certainly be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question. How much is Chartwell's going up on the food costs, and how many kids are on free lunch?
Okay, we are a CEP universal free school system. So lunch and breakfast are free to all students in Burke County Public Schools. As far as meal price increases, of course, our students and families aren't impacted because it's all free, but our contract goes up annually by the Consumer Price Index. We will be, in just a couple of months, going back out to bid because we are just concluding our 11th year of business with Chartwells. So that contract's going back out to bid for contracting school food services. And we do know that we have more than just Chartwells interested in that contract this year. So we're looking at some good, healthy competition and hopefully some great pricing for the school system.
So the pricing increased with the CPI, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Other questions? All right.
Just one real quick question. Keith, can you tell us about the relationship between the federal reimbursement and lunch prices? Are we consistent now, or?
Yes, as far as our food cost, our per meal, per plate cost, and what we are reimbursed from the federal government, we are still in a positive position. The margins are positive. Actually, and again, every child that wants a meal certainly receives one. It's all free. And based on the federal reimbursements, we are currently in a position that we're required by the state to have a spend down plan to spend the excess profits in the program. Primarily, those are being plowed back into the program to even further improve school nutrition services for our kids. We typically invest about $500,000 to $600,000 annually into new school food services equipment.
And that is still operated as an enterprise fund?
That is correct. It is a separate operation from the public school system.
Other questions? All right, hearing none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 6, also coming from the Board of Education, acceptance or rejection of offer to purchase surplus property. This will be also presented by Mr. Lawson.
Yes, sir. Several months back, I was contacted by the property owner that has a couple of those quadrangular shaped properties next to the 0.11 acre triangles property that's highlighted in your packet that adjoins Hillcrest Elementary School. He had inquired if we had use for his property, so I presented that to the board, and we had no particular use for the property. So things flipped on us, and he expressed interest in purchasing our small parcel in order to square up his property for his potential use. Of course, The process goes, on August the 5th, our board declared the property surplus. The next step in that process is to present it to you, the county commission, to see if you have any use for the property. If you all deem no use for the county, we will of course then take the next step, which would be to advertise the property for sale, to take bids, and then of course take the last and highest bid to the Board of Education for their consideration at that time.
All right, thank you, Keith. Gentlemen, for this item to move, we need to decide if it stays on the consent agenda or if it needs to move to the regular agenda. Anyone have any comments on this item as to whether or not there's any interest in us being involved in this property? I see lots of head shaking no. So with that, Madam Clerk, are we good to leave this on consent agenda that we have no interest?
Yes, I'll modify that item.
Everybody good with that? All right, this item will remain on the consent agenda as the board has no interest in this particular piece of property. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Then item number 7, we removed from the agenda. That brings us to item number 8, appointment to Child Protection and Child Fatality Prevention Team. This will come from Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen of the audience. This is a request to appoint James Robinson, our new EMS director, to seat number 2 on the Child Protection and Child Fatality Prevention Team to complete the remainder of a term ending April 30th, 2026, and to remove Brandy Talbert's name from the roster due to her retirement.
Any questions on this item? All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Seeing, hearing no questions, this item will remain on the consent agenda.
Sure,
Item
Michael.
number 9 comes also from the clerk, Council on Aging Appointments and Removal. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to reappoint the following members to the Council on Aging for 3-year terms ending November 30th, 2027. Linda McGalliard, seat number 1. Sherry Gast, seat number 2. Kathy Duncan, seat number 5. Susan Janney, seat number 7. Mary Wright, seat number 9. And Richard Moore, seat number 11. It's also a request to remove Kimberly Wilson's name from the roster for attendance.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Any questions on this item? Seeing here none, this item will remain on the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Item number 10 comes from the County Manager's Office, award contract for broadband access RFP. This will be presented by Hugh Sando, our Budget Strategy and Performance Analyst. Afternoon, Hugh.
After I turn my mic on, can you hear me now? Just have a little bit of information for you in relation to a recent request for proposals that we did relating to your continued goal of broadband expansion. This falls under focus area number 1 of your strategic plan, which is community advancement. And I would remind you that historically the board has prioritized trying to reach a goal of 90% access to broadband in Burke County. I want to give you a really quick overview of kind of where we are on some of the past projects so that you can have a framework for the consideration that we're going to be talking about today on the consent agenda. Just a bit of background, this process really started a few years ago with RDOF, which was a Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, which was a federal program designed to strengthen broadband access in rural communities. I'm also going to talk briefly about GREAT Grant and the CAB program, and then we'll get to where we are today with this North Carolina directed funding. You all have seen this map before. This is a map that talks through some of the broadband considerations that we have in Burke County. I would highlight kind of some key colors here. The first one is green. So all of the areas you see that are green were the RDOF, or the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund areas that started in 2022 that was awarded through that federal contract for service providers. And those are areas that we, because they fall under that umbrella, there's not going to be any further investment through the county programs for that, because that's completely being handled at the federal level. I'd also highlight the areas in red that currently do not have any designated broadband providers. And then you also see kind of on the far corners of the county, some circled areas with numbers I'm going to talk about in a little bit that relate to the CAB program. Really, this is kind of highlighting all of the different programs that we've been working on at our broadband subcommittee to try to expand access in the most efficient and equitable way possible. So the first grant I want to mention is the GREAT grant that started in 2023. It was funded using state ARPA funding. There was approximately $8 million that was invested into Burke County through that program, with approximately 1,800 households that are going to be served through that grant process, and that process will be complete installation by the end of 2026. The next phase was the CAB program, where we worked with the state to identify and inform them on areas that they wanted to prioritize. So we put together a number of kind of data analytics to help them see what pockets of the community had both a high number and a high percentage of citizens that were either unserved or underserved. So we produced this kind of color-coded map that we shared with them. Ultimately, they were the entity that prioritized and rolled out exactly which areas and which grants would be awarded. So vendors would bid on areas, and the state would rank those areas based on the need and the cost and all of those things for that project. That program was approximately 60 grants that were awarded across the state. It was a shared cost between the county, the state, and the provider. Since that project was rolled out, the state actually agreed to pick up the cost for the counties as well. So there's no county investment in that. It's just state and then provider funding. In Burke County, there's approximately $3 million that impacted about 945 households, and that project is also going to be substantially complete by the end of 2026. So that brings us to where we are today. We received a grant from the North Carolina General Assembly for $350,000 to provide additional capacity building in Burke County, discretionary for targeted areas. And so we worked as our committee to identify the areas that had the biggest need, and we worked to put out a request for proposals for the local broadband providers to allow them to bid on specific areas in the county to be completed by April of 2026. One thing I'd point out is I kind of go back to the map, this one on the right-hand side, you can see it says broadband unserved. So we've identified pockets in the county that have a higher concentration of unserved people, thinking that those are going to be the most effective places that we can run some broadband and really impact a higher number of people at the most efficient cost. And one thing you'll notice is that in the far corners of the county on the left-hand side map, that's where some of these CAB programs are going. And so we felt that based on the data, trying to prioritize some other areas would be beneficial, because as the providers who are rolling out CAB, they may pick up residences along the way. So if you're, for example, traveling kind of towards the southeast side of the county, there's a high likelihood that some of those communities are going to get picked up because they will now be within a closer proximity to a fiber line that wasn't there before, that's being run really to serve this other community. So the county identified an area actually towards the middle of the county, the middle top, that wasn't really receiving any type of grant funding. So we identified some target areas that had a high, again, amount of people that were unserved that we thought it was going to be unlikely to receive grant funding in the short term that we could prioritize this local funding with. And we issued a request for proposals for local broadband providers to bid on these target areas. We received 2 responses. One was from Spectrum and one was from Foothills Broadband. Each vendor responded and bid on each area, so they could either bid on one or all of the areas individually, so that we could come up with the best funding allocation to maximize the resources we had. If you put all these together, if we were to fund all of them, it would be well over $1 million, which is more than the funding we were allotted. So we picked the ones that really would provide the best results. And so the recommendation today would be to have consideration both for Foothills and for Spectrum. So we would award the project areas 4 and 4A to Foothills, and we would award project 5 to Spectrum. I will point out, when you look at the cost per household for this directed funding that we're doing versus the prior state grants, it is slightly higher. But again, we feel like that's because this is a community that is farther removed from kind of where all the broadband activity is going. And we feel like if we were not to invest in this area, the likelihood again of future funding being put there, it's farther down the road. We think this is going to impact approximately 60 households. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the proposed contracts.
All right, thank you, Hugh. Gentlemen, you've heard the information. Any questions for Hugh on this broadband expansion project?
Mr. Chairman, just one question, Hugh. So after all this, and we've obviously been working on this for years, trying to get universal broadband. So after all this is done and said and done by 2026, how many households are going to be without? What, and percentage-wise, how many citizens will be covered?
That's a great question. And in order to answer your question, I think we would have to go back and look after CAB has expanded to see how many of these other households that we're expecting to get picked up will get picked up. Because again, even though CAB is funded for specific areas in the corners of the county, we really think, especially like if you look kind of along the middle south portion of Burke County, there's that whole strip of houses there that weren't officially part of the CAB program, but if you're running fiber down the street and now the house is only 100 foot off the road, chances are very high that those houses will get picked up. As it stands now, prior to kind of finishing and picking up additional households, there's about 1,300 households in the community that we're aware of. But the other piece of this is the more that we refine and collect more data and do more grants, the more we find more parcels and more properties that the FCC data at the federal level didn't previously capture. So it's kind of continuing to refine closer to that. But hopefully by the end of 2026, we'll have a really good picture of kind of the final pieces.
Thank you.
Are we defining unserved? Most of this is for unserved. What about the underserved?
So underserved, I believe, is defined as less than 25 megabits download and 5 megabits upload. I might be slightly off on those numbers, but that's kind of how the FCC defines it.
And what are we going to do about that?
As far as
We prioritize them the same, underserved or non-served. We still highlighted both areas. They still show up in our count. If I may quickly, I think to Vice Chairman Mulvey's point, after all of this install, and you're talking 1,800 plus households with Great Grant, plus another roughly 1,000 with CAB, and then another, with this directed grant, I'm optimistic that the 90% policy goal of the board will be accomplished following the completion of what's already funded and planned.
And those will be fully served, correct?
That's all symmetrical, 100 over 100.
Other questions?
Just one quick question. As far as the dates that we're talking about, did Hurricane Helene, has anybody contacted you asking for extensions, more time?
I've spoken to Will Bowen with Spectrum, who has 80+%, and other than getting some damaged folks back online, he's indicated that they're still well on track to accomplish their goals. They've not asked for a state extension, and it's actually for Great Grant, it's July of 2025. So, we're only 7 or 8 months out from that. So I've spoken to him a couple times. He's governmental affairs director for Spectrum, and they still feel confident they'll hit all of their goals. Brightspeed, I haven't heard from specifically since the storm. They have one of the great grants in the eastern part of the state, but part of their contracts with the state DIT is to provide quarterly progress reports on their installation to the county. We've been receiving those, and at the end of Q1, our Q1, their Q3, September, they were also well on track.
Other questions? All right, seeing here none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Thank you. Item number 11, contract with Cognitive Connections. This is placeholder. This is presented by our county manager, Mr. Epley. Any comments, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. At your last meeting, you approved a opioid settlement resolution to fund our recovery court, which has been in Burke County now for about 5 years through June of 2025. Cognitive Connection has been the provider, the consultant, and the contracted partner largely for recovery court here in Burke County. And we aim to continue that through June with the goal of collecting performance data between now and your work session in March, and presenting that to you in March, and then giving you options on what will sustain recovery court long-term. Obviously, opioid settlement dollars are one way, but we know that that's one time and that doesn't provide a long-term pathway. So we'll be exploring other grants, but I think the main thing is to collect data so that we can report to the board on the outcomes from recovery court, which largely has been missing to this point. So we've met with the CEO and the COO of the Cognitive Connection. We're putting together a new contract with the funding requirements through June, along with some performance requirements that require them to give us monthly sobriety reports, attendance reports, employment and housing reports, recidivism, all of those type things, so that when we get to the spring timeframe, we can make a more informed decision about long-term best practices. So I'll have that contract finalized and for the board's consideration in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So this item will remain on consent agenda, right, Madam Clerk? Item number 12, also coming from the county manager, consideration of offer to purchase county-owned property. And number 2, presented by Mr. Manager or Lucas.
I'm going to ask Lucas to cover that, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jackson.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for the opportunity to present these items to you tonight. As you're aware, the county obtains surplus property through foreclosures. And it remains on our tax books. And we have received an offer. This particular PowerPoint is 2 different parcels, same gentleman. Kind of an overview of the process. We have a policy here at the county to where, individuals can put bids on these individual parcels through General Statute 105, 376C. Kind of the process goes, county attorney will accept the bid deposit, which for these 2 individual parcels, have been deposited into JR's trust fund with the county. If the board, at any point in time, the board can approve or deny a bid. If the board approves the bid, the advertising process will go into effect. We will post a notice to offer, and then anyone in the public can raise that bid by $750 or 5%, the greater of. It will go 10 days of publication for the upset bid process. And then, once that process is over, we'll warranty the deed, and that will be finalized by our county attorney. So the first of these, this is 3218 Silver Creek Springs Drive, Morganton. This is zoned R1, a little more than half an acre. We acquired this property back in 2010, so it's been sitting on our tax records since then. Which we're not, obviously owned by the county. We're not collecting any revenue from that. The minimum bid on this property is almost $2,500. Minimum bid is basically made up by the county's cost, closing cost, getting the deed, submitted and all that. This particular parcel, we received an offer of $1,860. Our county policy allows the Board of Commissioners to accept an offer below the minimum bid if the county deems it's in the best interest of the county. So Staff has reviewed this offer, and we do believe it is in the best interest of the county to get this back on our tax rolls and generating income. So same kind of concept here. This is also a parcel in Morganton, a little over half an acre, light industrial, acquired in 2006. So we've been hanging on to this for quite a while. We have, $3,581 of cost for the county, which is the minimum bid. We received an offer, close to 3,000, 2,960 for this particular parcel. And again, for this one, staff does believe that it is in the best interest to move on and get this back on our books. So no considerations tonight. This is, for your next meeting. But the options would be to accept the bid and begin that upset bid process, or deny the bid. The board has the authority to deny a bid at any given time. But when you do accept the first bid, it will start that upset bid process. And it'll give that 10 days in the advertising process. Any questions?
Thank you, Lucas. Gentlemen, then, as I understand this, if we allow it on to remain on the consent agenda, this item will move forward as the bid accepted, and we are good with that. So the question is, are we good with that as it stands?
Sure. Just one quick question. So we're looking at properties that we've possessed since 2006 and 2010. Does the county's minimum bid, does that include back taxes?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and then again, what I will like to mention, any of the properties that the county has acquired through these foreclosures or any type, our county staff, facilities, Mark's team, they are obligated to maintain and keep up these properties as well.
All right, and I think probably a lot of these expenses are related to the foreclosure process and advertising and all that kind of stuff. So as they stand, they're not gaining us any tax value coming back. So we just kind of keep losing if we don't move forward.
And just for reference too, Mr. Chairman, I think that there's between 12 and 14 properties that we currently own. And the initiation of this consideration is when someone reaches out to us. So there's a, they're posted on the website, but I don't know, I wouldn't consider what we do actively marketing. So if you wondered why we have one property that's 18 years and another one that's 14 years on in our possession. I think cleaning up two of around 12, I think, because I don't have it in front of me, but that's a significant portion. You're talking about, roughly 18% of your total properties you're holding that, to your point, you're getting back on the tax books, reducing liability, the maintenance, all those type things. It seems like the appropriate time to make that type of decision.
All right, hearing no other questions, this item will remain on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you. Item number 13 comes from County Manager and Tax approval of request to purchase EagleView software presented by Mr. Manager or Hugh. Hugh's coming back. All right. Thank you, Hugh.
I'm back. We have another item on your consent agenda, which is also another request that we submitted bids for. County website, I want to give you just a quick update on it. This is for some oblique aerial imaging. This falls under focus area number 4, fiscal stewardship, with the goal of having some increased service and reduced staff time for a number of departments across the county. Just to give you a quick overview, the county recently did a request for qualifications for some aerial imaging. You can see an example here of the difference between an oblique image, which is shot from a plane at kind of a perspective, versus satellites that are up in space that are shooting straight down. We did receive 2 bids. One was from EagleView Technology and the other one was from Sanborn Map Company. We've been working on this project for a couple of months now. We began planning it in spring of this year. We did an RFQ in September And our goal would be to identify and award a contract at your upcoming meeting at the end of November. Time really is a critical piece here, because if you're operating a plane trying to do oblique aerial imaging, you really want to do it during the winter months when there's reduced leafage, or as they call it, or foliage that's going to be blocking access and view from that plane. And so this project would be awarded in November, and the flyovers would be substantially completed this winter, with the project kind of wrapping up in spring of next year. There's a number of advantages for the county to have aerials of this quality. You can kind of see here, again, a perspective difference between a top-down view and a oblique view. The biggest department that's going to benefit from this is going to be our planning and zoning and our tax department, specifically in tax appraisal, but it also has a lot of other functions for some other departments. One example was if you are working in public safety and you're trying to find somebody, on an oblique image, if you have access to that, you can see fences and property things much better than if you're looking straight down. You can't really see somebody's fence if you're looking straight down. And so really this project mainly is going to be impacting tax assessors, but also it's going to support some other departments in their functions as well. As I said, we did have two vendors. One of them is recommended, so because we use the RFQ model, we can prioritize the bid that we feel is most responsive to our needs. Only one of the vendors who responded, EagleView, is compatible with the tax software that we use. And so we're going to be recommending that vendor to have a 3-year contract. They are a very well-known and prominent vendor in North Carolina. You can see a number of other communities and counties in the state that use EagleView for their services. And they also have a few features that we feel like are going to be really beneficial for our tax department. One of those is called Sketch Check. So the way these aerials integrate into our tax system, they will actually take the building sketch from the property card and they will load it into the aerials, and they will do a comparison using software to identify which parcels seem most out of line with what the aerial is producing. So you can see, kind of hard to see on this PowerPoint slide, but on the left photo you can see there's kind of a little bit of a mismatch between what the drawing of the building is in the aerial. But in the middle, there's a pretty major discrepancy between what the aerial has captured and what the tax card says. So this system will identify all of those mismatches and rank them by how big the discrepancy is between our current tax records and what the aerials say, so that our tax appraisers can prioritize and rank their time to be more efficient with identifying and correcting any types of discrepancies or errors in our system. So that's kind of all the information I have, but we do have a requested action here if you'd like to consider, obviously up at the next board meeting on the consent, to approve, deny, or modify the proposed contract that we have in response to this bid. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you, Hugh. Any questions on this item?
Couple, Mr. Chairman. Does this integrate with our current GIS system? So if we go look at our GIS photos, will it be these photos?
So it does integrate with county GIS system. There will be some discussions around if it will be utilized mainly for us and for our municipal partners, or if it will be a public accessing kind of data set.
Okay, and then the second question, is this a beneficial tool as we look at our next revow?
We feel like this will provide substantial time savings as far as reconciling any potential changes. So yes, it'll be very beneficial.
Hugh, you indicated a 3-year contract. Does that mean we'll be flying at 3 different times, or we're just paying across 3 years?
It's really spreading out that payment over 3 years. So they'll do the flyovers this winter, and then they'll spread out that cost over 3 years.
Or will they be doing anything for us during that 3 years, or are we just splitting the cost?
They will continue to provide support, especially when you look at some of these things like Sketch Check. If we have questions or things of that nature, they'll be around to provide support, but there won't be like a substantial amount of other services through that service period.
Other questions? All right, seeing here none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Thank you, Hugh. Item 14 comes from Finance, Capital Project Ordinance for Animal Shelter and EMS Base 1 Headquarters, be presented by Margaret Pierce, our Finance Director. Afternoon, Margaret.
How is everyone? This is to present the capital project ordinance that we need. We will be doing one ordinance for the two projects since they're overlapping ideally with the architect and the builder. This takes care of the paperwork side of getting our projects going. Questions?
Any questions for Margaret on this item? All right, seeing here none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Next two items comes from our tax department. Here from our tax administrator, Mr. Bridges, tax collection report, and then the release refund report. Evening, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Before I start this, to answer Mr. Burns' question about helping with the revow with the Eagle View, it would help us tremendously. I anticipate that the efficiencies we get from this will decrease the need for additional personnel going into the revow. So for the tax collections report for October 2024, property taxes year-to-date, we've collected $30,688,301.05. That is 66.87% of the budgeted amount, with a balance to collect of $18,154,877.95. Motor vehicle tax, year-to-date, we have collected $1,918,855.27. That is 37.8% of the budgeted amount, leaving a balance to collect of $3,157,388.73. Current year taxes, we've collected $38,557,156.32. That is 64.40% of the budget amount, leaving a balance to collect of $21,312,266.68. Delinquent taxes, year-to-date, we have collected $291,125.89. That is 41.59% of the budget amount, leaving a balance to collect of $408,874.11. Penalties and interest, we have collected $112,675.04. That is 34.25% of the budget amount, with a balance to collect of $216,324.96. Overall property levy, tax levy is $52,254,596.91. Collected a year to date is $638,301.05, or 66.3% of the budget amount. Balance to collect of $18,616,295.96.
All right, thank you, John. Any questions for John on this report? If you're none, this item will remain on consent. Then we'll move on to the release refund report.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Mr. Chairman, for the refund and release report amount is $70,526.01, with a rebuild amount of $19,452.32, with a net release of $51,073.69, and refunds of $1,924.79. Motor vehicles, refunds of over $100 is total of $613.80. Any questions?
Thank you, John. Any questions on these items?
While I have an expert, I do have one question. Trailer tags. I discovered this week that you can buy multi-year tags.
Yes.
How does that handle through, what do I need to do from here, I guess is what I'm asking.
Generally speaking, for motor vehicle tags, when you purchase the sticker or the new plate, you pay the tax at the motor vehicle office when you buy that plate. For multi-year plates, DMV is not going to know what the value of that is year 2, year 3 down the road. So those vehicles have to be listed with the tax office every year to be taxed along with the regular tax bill in July.
Okay. Is that more trouble than it's worth?
Excuse me?
Is that more trouble than it's worth, or?
It is a lot of trouble because a lot of people think that when they buy the tag, they're used to paying the taxes when they get that sticker, they get that plate, so they don't list it with us. And then when we find out about it, they get a late listing penalty, and they're not too happy about that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, John. This
Just-
item will remain on the consent agenda.
Just one more thing before I sit down. I know everybody knows today is Election Day, and I just want to make a prediction for tonight. It'll be 100% chance of dark.
All right, thank you, John. We'll bring you back for more predictions some other time. Item number 6, items for decision. First item comes from Madam Clerk, appointments and reappointments to the Burke County Planning Board. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen of the audience. We need to make some appointments or reappointments to the Burke County Planning Board. Seat number 1 is the East, and the applicant is not interested in serving another term, as well as seat number 2 is also an East, and I've been reaching out to folks trying to beat the bushes for an East candidate. So if you know anybody, please send them my way. And if we don't get any applicants, I will take those off for the regular meeting. Seat number 4 is to make an appointment or reappointment representing the West, and we have several applicants on file for your consideration. It's also a request to remove Michael Colterra and Richard Evie from the official roster, and Mr. Evie has served, I believe, 14 years of consecutive service and is to be commended for his service to Burke County and its citizens.
I did notice, Madam Clerk, a misspelling in his name on the suggested motion line. If you,
Yeah, I just saw that.
okay.
Thank you.
Any questions on this item? Looks like we have 7 potential candidates for seat number 4, so please be giving that consideration, and same for seat number 6.
And there could be possibly more by the time your regular meeting gets here, so.
Okay, so please be given those consideration, gentlemen, as we approach our meeting. Any questions on this item? All right, seeing here none, this item will remain on for decision.
Thank you.
Item number 2 comes from County Manager. This also involves the selling of county-owned property.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, the board's permission, Lucas will cover this again. It was, and you may choose to move it to the consent. He was a late depositor, so we didn't get that moved on the agenda. But very similar to Mr. Cowell's proposal.
Hey, Lucas.
Thank you, Board. So like Brian said, we received this deposit late yesterday evening, finalized his paperwork. Again, that deposit went into our county attorney's trust account. Same type of deal, another offer on some surplus property. Won't spend too much time. We already went through the overview process. So we've received this offer and the county allows us to accept that. This particular parcel is on 1818 Burkemont Avenue. It is zoned R2. It is 0.15 of an acre. This gentleman wants to align his property line. He owns some adjoining parcels. It's more or less just to kind of finalize his piece of acreage there. We've acquired this. The county acquired it in 2005. Again, the minimum bid, which is what the county has invested in the property, $2,492.50. We've received that offer for $1,000. Again, we believe it's in the best interest to get it back on the tax roll and continue collecting income there. No consideration tonight. Same deal. We can, the board has the authority to deny any bid at any time or accept the bid and begin the upset bid process. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Lucas. Any question on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we change that over to consent with the other items.
Everybody good with moving that to consent agenda? All right, Madam Clerk, we'll move that over to consent and accept that process.
Very good. Thank you, board.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. This brings us to item number 7. Have a couple of reports to hear this afternoon. This will come from our DSS monthly operational report for October 2024. This will be coming from Corey and Amanda. Afternoon.
Good afternoon. There's a report that outlines a lot of updates throughout the agency, included in your packet. Most of what we're going to talk about today is our DSNAP operation, which we just finished up last week, and Amanda's going to go through a presentation, talk to you a little bit about what disaster SNAP benefits are and kind of what we did here in Burke County.
Thank you. So I'm Amanda Grady. I'm the Assistant Director at DSS. The month of October was a lot about just disaster and helping our county. What we did, we were one of 25 total counties affected by the disaster, and DSS was required to administer what they call a DSNAP program. So DSNAP is a federally assisted program designed to provide food assistance to individuals and families affected by the disaster. It helps our citizens with nutritional needs when they face hardships due to disasters. We had the hurricane, but it could be fires or it could be floods. Some of the key components of DSNAP is it is just temporary support. It is for individuals who normally do not receive any type of assistance. I'll go into that just a little bit later, but it provides benefits that they can use to purchase food, and it is available in response to a federally declared disaster. So it has to be a federally declared disaster. It offers critical support to those who have lost income and resources as a result of the disaster. It provides access to food during the recovery, and it helps to rebuild our community. So before I get into DSNAP a little bit more, during the disaster, we also had to look at those who currently receive food nutrition services. And so for those that receive food nutrition services, they were given an automatic replacement. They were given 70% in September. The USDA did go back and allot them up to 100% of what they normally receive. And then just a couple days ago, they did go and do the same thing for October. So those families will receive another additional allotment up to 100% of what they normally receive. The other thing they did was extend the reporting time. So normally if someone loses benefits due to power, they only have 10 days to report that. Because of the type of disaster that we had, they did extend that time to allow families that have been displaced, or whatever the case may be, that they did get additional time to report that. The other thing for those that receive food stamps or food nutrition services is normally they would not be allowed to buy hot, ready food. So they can buy the birthday cake in the deli, but they normally are not allowed to buy like the rotisserie chicken. And so this waiver allowed families to be able to do that. I'm going to kind of click through this a little bit. So going back to the DSNAP overview and eligibility, DSNAP provides a 1-month benefit to eligible disaster survivors. It is for households that normally would not receive any type of food nutrition services or food stamps. If a household would not normally qualify for FNS, they may qualify for DSNAP based on the disaster-related expenses. So one of the things to keep in mind, what we looked at or what we were allowed to look at is net income, so what they actually brought home, and then those expenses that they had as a result of the disaster. It could be generators, gas for generators, extension cords, motel stays. And we were allowed to take that off the monthly income, and that was the criteria there. So we were definitely able to help a lot of people. We had to recruit a lot of people. This was a big undertaking. We did know that with the property, we wanted one way in and one way out. This would allow us to be the most efficient. It took everybody. It took over 100 staff members. It took our county, some from our sheriff's department, some from Morganton Public Safety. It was a community effort, and very commendable in that. We had people to run it to be efficient. We had people who took applications, and while those applications were being processed, we had people who were interviewing and people who were keying. Everybody had a job. Everybody had something that they had to do to make sure that we gave people those benefits. We had cards on hand, and the benefits had to be there within 3 days. I wanted to take time out on this particular slide. I don't really have a lot of time to read it, but halfway through the week, our staff members did anywhere from 60 to 80 hours in 1 week. So we were there 12 hours a day, just seeing people and making sure that we did the most that we could for our county. Halfway through the week, a worker had put up this sign to encourage our staff. So what it basically says is, if you want to leave a note of thank you for the people who have been working tirelessly please do so. This was probably one of my favorite things to go back to. Anytime that someone felt down, they could go back and look to see, these are the families that normally wouldn't be asking for help, and here we are to help them. One of the notes on here that was my favorite was, thank you for helping me have a nutritious meal when normally we would have probably had ramen noodle for dinner. I mean, at the end of the day, I know everybody wants to see statistics. Because it was 25 counties, the state had never done anything like that before. And Burke had definitely never done one. They did open up a call center that did not do very well. I don't think that they realized the impact it would have, the amount of calls. And so at the end of October, we still had 1,417 own applications left to complete that the state, was supposed to take care of. Our county opted to take care of those people. And with the help of Carteret, Beaufort, and Alamance, they did extend the deadline, and we were able to take care of them. Huh?
Not these final numbers.
Go ahead.
First off, I just want to mention a couple of things. Amanda kind of alluded to it, but we have never done this before. So we knew what DSNAP was, but we came up with this whole operation in about a week, and Amanda's not going to talk good about herself, but what her and her staff did over that time, like, we saw 1,000 people a day for the last 3 days, and we saw the 5th most people of any of the 25 counties. There were some more people in the queue, so this is at final numbers, but the most up-to-date numbers was the Burke County process, or approved 5,439 applications. So that's just approvals, and there's probably like an 70 to 80% approval rate. So if you add the denials on that, we saw 6,000 plus people, which served 15,000 people and put $3.6 million directly into Burke County's economy. So all this was done in 7 days. So I just wanted to share those numbers with you, but I'll let you finish your presentation. But I want to say the work that the staff did was remarkable, and to show up 7 days in a row for 60 or 70 hours, and I'm sure they weren't smiling all the time, but I mostly saw them smiling. So I mean, I just think it's remarkable what they were able to do. So.
Also, just a little side note, Corey learned some Spanish while we were there. He did run the 10 at the top, and that's so commendable. I don't know many directors that would have been out there outside making sure that people got in the building and knew the direction that they were able to go. So I appreciate your hard work in that as well, along with everything else.
And we had 2 staff on site from Carteret County, including their director, for 4 days too. So I think that's also a pretty commendable thing that they were willing to send staff on site. And I mean, they would do anything we asked them to do. And they do DSNAP a lot in the East, so I mean, their expertise was very much appreciated. We probably would have got it done without them, but it was certainly much easier having them here.
Just on statistics side, we did see 4,108 people in person. That's what came through our door. And of course, those are the final numbers. I think some of those include the onlines, but just in those folks that came through the door, we completed 4,030 applications. Most of those, as you can see, were approved. 312 were the only ones denied, and we gave out 4,162 cards out of 5,000 that that USDA made available to us. And then, I'm not really sure how to play that on here. Do what? It's just sometimes good to see the faces. Y'all have any questions?
Thank you, Amanda. Any questions for Amanda or Corey? All right, well, I certainly want to commend you for what you did. I had the opportunity to go by a time or two, and they had quite a operation going on over there. I don't know if you were down Parker Road during that week, but there was lots of people came through that building, and it was managed, I thought, very well, and appreciate what you did for our community. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just briefly, and I'll be brief, but really through the entire disaster recovery, I just want to brag on Corey, Chaslin, and Amanda. Whether it was, I called Corey on a Sunday night and said, I need 20 people tomorrow to run a donation center, and it was delivered, and they've gone above and beyond. I like you, visited DSNAP, and holy smokes, it was really impressive. I have nothing but positive things to say about the entire team's effort, but we talk a lot about organizational purpose and values, and I think that team has largely lived that out over the last month, and DSNAP is just another example. So I publicly just want to say thank you to the whole team.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much. This item will remain on our reports agenda.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Do we really need this on for the next time, or are we just doing it for today?
That's correct. I stand corrected. This
Yeah,
item.
that's what your note said, but yeah, that's what I thought, it's just today.
So this item will not be forward on their regular reports, but then we have General Services Monthly Operational Report. This is a placeholder. Mark, any comments for us today, sir?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. At your next meeting, I'll be prepared with a PowerPoint to share with you information about general services, which includes solid waste, water, sewer, and facility maintenance. We've got a lot of projects to share with you, things that have been going on, and some really good financial information, I believe, as well. If I may, I know a lot of accolades have gone around with about the storm response and EMS and everything else. I'd just like to tell you, as someone that works for the county manager, he's done a great job of leadership, and he's easy to follow. And I know the finance department's had a pile thrown on them as well, and they really pulled it all together, and that's why you hear all these other positive comments about staff, because it trickles down, absolutely, if I may mention that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions from anybody? All right, other discussion items for today? Please submit any reports you have to the clerk so they can be included in our regular meeting. November the 8th, 8:30 to 4:30, we'll be hosting NCACC Local Government Leadership Hurricane Helene Recovery Response Meeting at Foothills Education Center here in Morganton. This meeting is not open to the public. It's an invitation-only meeting, but just wanted to remind you, gentlemen, of that for local government. This is a regional meeting as well. November 8th, we have 3 p.m. groundbreaking ceremony for our new animal shelter and EMS space. This will occur at 636 Kirksey Drive. That's next door to our 911 center. That'll be rain or shine, so please remember that special day we've all been looking forward to. We've already been reminded that today's election day. Let me remind you, if you haven't voted, I would certainly encourage you to vote today before the end of the day. November the 11th is Veterans Day. The county offices will be closed that day. November 14th and 15th is the NCACC Legislative Goals Conference. Those of you that may be attending that, please be reminded. November 19th, 6 p.m., Board of Commissioners regular meeting. November 22nd, 4 to 6 p.m., public service reception for our commissioners to my left. Again, we'll be looking forward to that. That'll be at the Morganton Community House, and if you haven't responded and plan to attend, please let Madam Clerk know so we can have enough victuals for everybody. But that's certainly open for everyone to come by and greet Johnny and Scott and thank them for their service to our community and our county. Then again, November 28th, 29th, county offices are closed for Thanksgiving. And again, we encourage groups to sign up for helping us with the Pledge of Allegiance at our commissioners' meetings. That can be done on our county website as well. Then I would also remind you to spay and neuter your pets and take care of those animals as well. Item number 9, we have one action item, county manager engagement of a public assistance FEMA consultant. This will be presented by our county manager. Gentlemen, you do have an agreement there in front of you if you'd like to reference it for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your rules of procedure do allow, at the board's discretion, to periodically take action when time is of the essence at your pre-agenda meeting, and that's what we have for consideration today. As we continue to really manage phase 3 of this storm event, which is long-term recovery, it is complicated. I brought a quick optic. This is known as the Papa G. My good friend here knows what that means, but it's about 500 pages of federal compliance. And as much as we respect and appreciate the public assistance that is available through the federal government and through FEMA, to say that it is complicated is minor understatement. And largely the way this works is the county is responsible for those expenditures, and then you file for reimbursement and you qualify. And I think the way that I would reconcile this is to say, if you were going to go to court, I would advise you to have an attorney. If you're going to file very complicated corporate tax return, I would advise you to engage with a CPA tax attorney. And largely that's what we're asking the board to consider today is we have gone through a request for proposal process to retain professional advisement in the world of disaster recovery services to make sure that all of the things that the county is doing to leverage an expedited recovery are reimbursed. And then secondly, there's a 404 and a 406 section that allow for mitigation, meaning build back stronger. How can you, so the example that I would use, that I have used, is the city of Hickory never lost water. So what if there was an opportunity for our water system to be directly tied into the city of Hickory that also tied into the city of Morganton? There's a possibility there that 35,000 people may have not lost that resource. And those are examples of what resiliency and mitigation may be able to offer. So I want to talk briefly about what our RFQ looked like for this disaster recovery consulting process, and then kind of where we are today. I would remind you all that we have an incident management team that's comprised of, that continues to meet regularly. Up until this week, every single day, stopped last week being twice a week, or twice a day, still meeting every morning at 8:30. And we talk about all things storm, whether that's sheltering or debris collection or private roads and bridges or 214, 215 time, which is what we get reimbursed for professional administrative time. And now we've put together a steering committee to help make sure that we're documenting things correctly, filling out the appropriate application. And we really had three primary goals, and that is to make sure that we're building the right systems for monitoring, and that includes grant applications, make sure we're capturing the right cost. We want to make sure that we're tracking and monitoring for federal reporting compliance. If you've never been on the federal grants portal, I would invite you to spend some time there to get a little bit of a feel. And then lastly, there's some highly technical federal law that has largely happened post-disasters that guide how this public assistance process works, specifically the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act. All of that is part of this public assistance and recovery process. I'd point out that also as we start managing cost recovery, the FEMA public assistance policy is broken into work category. So you can see largely we've talked about debris, and as a reminder, we have partnered with Debris Tech to do our monitoring and a company called SDR to do the collection. And to put it in context, we have a specific cell that's been permitted at the landfill. It's about 3 acres where all of this material has to be measured and quantified before it goes in to ensure that we receive reimbursement. And there's about 400,000 cubic yards of material on the residential side. We think now that commercial's been approved in Burke County, that's another 250,000 cubic yards. This could be a $10 to $12 million cost to handle just the debris. And we're cash flowing that all up front and then putting together project work orders to make sure that that money comes back. Largely, again, documentation, measurement, all of that stuff is critical. But this just gives you some idea of the types of categories, different applications, different rules, compliance requirements that have to be followed. Mitigation, again, falls into 404 and 406. Both of these are 404. As you can see, this is the entire state. So Congress will allot a certain amount of money to the state of North Carolina for 404 money, and New Bern could apply for that. It's not just to the counties that are involved in the declaration. So that's, between 404 and 406, part of what these folks will help us with is competitive grant writing. We've talked a lot about Indian Hills, and we had a federal FEMA BRIC grant that we were navigating through that. Maybe we can use that money differently now that we've been through a disaster and the pump station was largely flooded. Those are the types of conversations we want to make sure we're using highest and best use of the resources that we have available. So we posted this, as you can see, as quickly as we could. We have to follow the Code of Federal Regulations, so this Trump state procurement process requires us to post it for at least 2 weeks. I'm really proud of our finance team. They were able to get a sample RFP from an eastern county, I think Carteret, and we modified that to meet our needs, got that posted. As you can see, within 10 days or so of the storm, left it posted for the minimum requirement, received 10 qualified bids, which was really important to us. We narrowed that down to 5 and interviewed the top 3 last week, and I think we concluded on Friday morning. The owner of the company that we're here to recommend, DCMC Partners, was in Puerto Rico. They've been contracted to help manage, I believe, Hurricane Ian recovery for the entire power grid in Puerto Rico, and he said they're spending about $2 billion a year there. The problem is they've got to spend $40 billion, so you can do the math, it's going to be a while. But he got on a plane and flew to Morganton yesterday. We met with him and his team. They're already on the ground, ready to start reviewing our timekeeping and our documents and all our purchasing policies and all the things we have to go through to put our packets together so that we can expedite recovery in as quick a way as possible here in Burke County. So the recommendation or the requested action for the board is to authorize completion of this agreement with DCMC pending approval from the county attorney. I would point out that the fee schedule is not fixed fee, it's rate times hours, and 5% of our damages are reimbursable for the consulting costs. So largely, any expense we spend on the consultant will be reimbursed through FEMA as long as it doesn't exceed that 5% threshold, which we intend to manage to. There's a fee schedule in your contract there. I think it's Exhibit B, and I would consider those very favorable hourly rates for the level of talent and knowledge we're getting. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but I appreciate the board's consideration to expedite this and versus making us wait another 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any questions on this item?
Mr. Chairman, if you'd permit, I have a comment. Going back to 2013, that was the year that I took over as chairman of the Burke County Board of Education. And this county had to partner with the school system to petition a local government commission to allow the county to use $350,000 of school capital money to repair the air conditioning system at the courthouse and the chiller over on Parker Road. So I just want to say I'm very appreciative of the leadership that we've had since then, that we had a fund balance that was substantial enough to be able to front this money to take care of the citizens in this county. And with that, if there's no other questions, I'd be happy to make the motion.
I think I'll just make one other comment. Being a little bit familiar with this process from my work, this is one of those times when it's really important to know what you don't know 6 months before you should have known it. And so I think this help will get us a lot of information that we haven't had, fortunately, we haven't had to deal with before. And but it's going to be very important for us to get all of our ducks together so that we can recover as much of this loss as we possibly can. And I concur, Mr. Burns, that we're going to be fronting a lot of those funds. And thankfully, we do have some funds available to help us with that during this time. So with that, I'll entertain your motion, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the contract with DCMC for comprehensive disaster recovery management services and authorize the county manager to negotiate, finalize, and execute the contract on behalf of the board, subject to review and/or revision by the county attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That's 5-0. All right. Gentlemen, that brings us to the item we've been looking for. It's adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. Well, I didn't have to twist any arms for that.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one more quick, less than 10 second? I'd like to say a quick public thank you to Morehead City. They've helped us tremendously. We've mentioned Craven and a few other folks that helped us with DSNAP, but if you're not familiar with what a knuckle boom truck is, it's a truck with a 5-yard dumpster on the back and a hydraulic arm that acts as a backhoe. And they've not only sent us staff like a PIO that spent a week here and helped us keep our website updated and so forth, they also donated last week this knuckle boom truck, which is a tremendous asset. And I just want to thank, on behalf of the Board of Commissioners, their city council, their leadership folks down there for that. It's being, tremendous help to our recovery effort at the landfill and special projects, and we're just grateful for their contribution.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Manager. I did see that, and I think the board would certainly concur and appreciate their assistance with that item. Any other comments? All right. Those in favor of adjourning, signify by the uplifted hand. Maybe we've already done that, but if not, we did it twice. 5-0.
That's why I said anything.
Thank you very much, all of you, for being here today. And I do believe, Madam Clerk said there's some snacks here. If you need a snack before you go, please come back, help yourself.
Please help yourself.